as soon as we decided to have a show on greatness, I'm like, I got to get Chris on the show.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool, man. Really good. I'm glad to be here.
Well, I was just thinking about this.
Great to see you again, man. Yeah, we've known each other how long? Since 1993, maybe.
Yeah.
Is that I think so. 93 or 94, maybe? When did you start?
At least 94, 27, 28 years.
Yeah.
I was talking to both of my boys about having you on the show. You know, Brandon and Jake, they're 31 and 29 right now.
That's crazy because they were like little kids when I met them.
Yeah, and they were coming to see you power lift. We would come and see you.
Yeah, they were like 3 and 5 or something. They were like little tiny guys. And then I remember I saw them at some point because we had kept in touch for a while after we went to USC together. We should explain we went to film school together. Yep. And I should also explain that actually you were a huge like a huge point in my life that you probably don't even understand. But you were like the wake-up call. So I went to USC film school and I got in. Luckily, I had terrible grades in high school. And I got in because I made a music video for my friends that lived in Poughkeepsie, New York. Like I was from upstate New York. I went to a small community college. I went to a community college because my father told me either go to a community college or get a job as a garbage man or a post office worker, you know, go work for the city because they have good benefits. And it's like, literally, that's what my dad thought of me, you know, and I was like, wow, my own dad doesn't even see me as some success. And I always saw myself as like being famous. And then there's my dad going like, well, you need to get a job. That's what you're cut out for because you don't do good in school. I was like, oh my God. And then that was like wake up call number one.
Yeah.
And then I went to this community college and I started taking courses in communications because first of all, the teacher was hot. It was a chick that was from Syracuse and she was young.
That's always helpful.
And I knew the teacher was hot, and also it was easy. It was like going to be an easy way for me to get an A because you could just keep screwing off, right?
Sure.
And our very first assignment, I remember our very first assignment for that was to actually make a radio commercial for something that was going to go on. And showing you how long ago this was, my first thing that I ever did, film or TV wise ever, was a fake commercial for Mike Tyson versus Evander Holyfield. and that was my faux commercial, but I did it in class and everybody was like, oh my God, you did that, because it was just me doing like several different voices and stuff.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh wow, you did that all by yourself. And I'm like, oh yeah, it was no problem, it was easy. And I realized that something that was really hard for other people to do, which is like make entertainment, make content, just came to me as second nature because I was just actually used to always screwing off. So long story short, I made a music video for my friends. It was judged by several famous people, including Francis Ford Coppola. That got me into USC Film School. I got into USC Film School, and then it's like I'm in there with all these kids like yourself who have these different backgrounds. Like you came from the military, you had a very disciplined background already. Yeah. People like our friend Kevin Seeley came from the military. He was a little bit older. He had a little bit of a military background. So you guys were very disciplined. We had guys like Rick Famuyiwa who ended up doing episodes of The Mandalorian, which is awesome.
Yeah.
And Rick was our guy in film school who was very disciplined because he was on the basketball team at first. So everybody coming from like different backgrounds and they also, everybody wanted to make films since they were like 12 years old.
That's right.
I remember my producer on my first film, Bigger, Stronger, Faster, Alex Bono, saying, I always kind of hated you because you never really wanted to make movies. And I always wanted to do it since I was a little kid. And there you go, like just getting into film school. But I look at that as like, I don't take that for granted. You know, like I look at that like, yeah, I didn't want to do that in the beginning because I didn't know that that was a calling for me. But once I realized that it was a calling, I decided to go for it. And then when I got into film school, we had to show we had one class. It was cinema. Is it 290?
290,
right?
Yeah.
We'll never forget that because it's brutal. You have to make 5 films in one semester, right?
Yeah.
So it's not bad enough that you have to make 5 films in one semester. You had to make 5 films in one semester with no sound, like no sync audio. So you couldn't have actors communicate anything to each other.
Yeah.
And the very first movie we watched in the very first like class that we had, I think we had like 3 weeks of class. And then we started showing films, and yours was the very first one. And I just remember covering my head going, I don't belong here. Like I am so outclassed. I am like, everything was 100% technically proficient. Like all the cuts were perfect. Everything was just like, wow, this guy's got it buttoned up. And first of all, that's when I became friends with you,
Yeah.
because I'm like, this guy's a badass. I need to be friends with him. So I need to like learn how to do this stuff. And secondly, it was kind of like that feeling of like, I don't really belong here. And in the beginning, I just kind of scraped by with humor. I just try to make everything funnier
Yeah.
than everybody else. And I remember by like the second or third film that I made, our teacher telling me like, you have he's like, remember he told me you have a stamp. He's like, when I see a Chris Bell movie, like I know it. There's like this stamp on it
That's
that I
right.
know it. And that, along being in class with people like you that were really talented, just gave me the confidence to pursue what I was doing.
Well, I appreciate hearing that. I think you do have a stamp. I remember, if I'm not mistaken, in 290, wasn't one of your films Bruce Laundry?
Yeah, Bruce Laundry was famous. It was a fight in a laundromat. I actually subsequently remade that as a little short for Yahoo. At some point, I had won a film festival, and Yahoo wanted me to make like a little funny short film. So we remade Bruce Laundry. But I have to say that something about the magic of the first one, I think the first one was actually better, but it was a Bruce Lee fight in a laundromat,
It was, it
And
was,
I always thought that I was going to make comedies. I always thought that like
yeah,
I wrote, in film school, I wrote a movie about stealing gnomes in high school called Gnomes Without Homes, which was a true story based on what me and my friends did in high school. And then things got a lot more serious, like I went through 10 years of living in LA, and I just saw where like, I don't know, I saw so much in like going to the gym every day and training at Gold's Gym. And I was just around all these people. And my life became so crazy. I always tell people like I lead a very storied life. Like there is nobody I say that my brother and I are the Forrest Gumps of fitness. There's nobody in fitness, I think, that knows. And I didn't intend to really be in fitness. I want to be a filmmaker, but my brother and I, there's nobody in the fitness industry that knows more people and has more of an outlet than my brother and I have into all these people. So we just try to use it for good, and we try to
yeah.
use it to help people. And so I was into this journey for like a long time, and I wasn't successful in filmmaking at all. But then one day, my friend and your friend, Alex Buono, walked into
Yeah.
the gym, who was one semester ahead of us in film
Yeah.
school. He walked into the gym and he's like, "What are you doing? You're working here?" And he was working on Saturday Night Live. He's like, "What are you doing working here?" I'm like, "Well, this is the most fun job I can have, where I can make a lot," because I was selling memberships. So it's
Yeah.
like to the most famous gym in the world. So I'm like, I can make decent money here,
Yeah.
and I get to screw off all day. It was like perfect for me. And I get to meet all these people. And through that, I became friends with The Rock, Stone Cold Steve Austin. My brother and I got John Cena into wrestling. So a lot of it started in the wrestling category.
Yeah.
But as you remember, I was also friends with people like the Barbarian Brothers, um, who unfortunately are both passed away now, kind of recently, actually.
Yeah.
They were two crazy twin brothers that were in like Natural Born Killers,
Oh yeah.
and they wanted to hire you and I to go to Romania and make movies with them and all sorts of crazy stuff. But
I remember
we
that dinner
got,
we had with them.
yeah, yeah, it was crazy. I mean, we got my brother and I have gotten to meet pretty much everybody in the fitness industry and
Yeah.
stayed friends with them throughout the entire time. You see big brands like Quest Nutrition. Well, my brother and I are really good friends with the guy that started that and sold it for $1 billion. Like we are friends with all these people just through our relationships in the gym and sort of being cool with people.
Yeah.
And also like the fact that I made Bigger, Stronger, Faster, and that was my first film.
Huge.
And the way that came about was so weird, because I was just saying, Alex walked into the gym and he had gone to film school with us, and he's like talking to me about like, well, what are you doing working here, whatever. Then I gave him a script that I wrote, and he's like, I want to produce this script, and it had nothing to do with the gym at all.
Yeah.
And we began talking, and then I gave him another script, and that script did have to do with the gym. It was like a bodybuilding mockumentary, and he wanted to produce that. Then when he read the mockumentary thing, he goes, "This mockumentary thing's great, but my girlfriend, who's now his wife, Tamsin," he's like, "but my girlfriend makes documentaries, and she seems to think that you have this crazy life, and it would be great as a documentary." And I'm thinking like, well, there's nothing, like, to me, you don't see your own life like that. So you're like,
That's right.
there's nothing,
Yeah.
trust me, there's nothing interesting about me. And so when we went to make Bigger, Stronger, Faster, it really was going to be an expose about steroids and what was going on in baseball at the time. It was 2004 when we started it. So it was like
Yeah.
Jose Canseco was coming out with the book, and all
Yep.
these people were just coming out with all these, secrets. And I just remember like it was yesterday, there was a conversation that we had on the phone. And I just said, well, for me, it's a constant battle because I'm a power lifter. I've competed since I was a young kid
Yep.
in powerlifting. When I went to USC, I competed in powerlifting. I think the day before our first day in film school, I came in with bloodshot eyes because I did a powerlifting competition and squatted 650. And I came into school and everybody's like, what's wrong with this guy's face? And it's like your first day of film school and I got a mohawk and bloodshot
Yeah.
eyes. And people are what's wrong with this dude?
Stay away from this kid.
Marilyn, yeah, they thought I was like some Marilyn Manson, freak or something, but
Yeah.
it's really just bloodshot eyes, fat power lifter back then. And it was just kind of funny because that was my life.
Yeah.
But Alex and Tamsin saw it as like being interesting because on that phone call I said, I just want to know what's going to happen to my brothers. And they're like, what are you talking about? And I said, well, both my brothers, they're on steroids right now. And they're like, well, that's your movie. Like, don't you
That's
see
right.
it? And I'm like, well, nobody care. People care about Barry Bonds. They care about Mark McGuire. They care about Sammy Sosa. They care about Kurt Schilling. They don't care about my brother and I. And people are like, no, they will, trust me. And they're like, you're the middle brother of three brothers. You have an older brother that's a pro wrestler, it's on steroids. You have a younger brother who's a top power lifter who's on steroids. And you're in the middle trying to figure it out. That's a great story. And I thought about it for a little bit. I go, you know what? That is a really interesting story. And that's the path that we pursued for Bigger, Stronger, Faster. And as you know, I never wanted to make documentaries. Like I got sucked into it. I had no ambition to make a documentary ever. And I think that's important for people to realize is you hit these bumpers in life and you have to know, like you've hit several of them in your life, I know, with your experiences. And you hit these bumpers and you go different places. Like you're not making movies, but you're doing something awesome.
Yeah. I mean, I can't believe, what is it? 2008, Bigger, Stronger, Faster came out. Was it 2008? And we went to, I remember Gina, myself, and Jacob went to the premiere and blown away. I think that you had the ability to take a topic that maybe a lot of people can't relate to from steroid use, and then you pulled people in. But that I think is your stamp. I think that you've always been transparent about your life, even in film school. You were an open book, and I think that's what's made your film so great. I mean, I knew this kid from Poughkeepsie, New York, and here was this kid from Chino, California, that became instant friends. I mean, we were making crazy films at USC, going to powerlifting competitions that I watched you, going to the movies, going out to clubs. You were coming over to our house at Thanksgiving, and and we demolished that turkey. But I thought for sure at that point you were going to be that next comedy person in film based on everything that you were doing. And now your films, I don't even want to say they're just great. I think they're great at getting people to think at a time
Thank you.
When people need to think more. I mean, here you are, filmmaker, director, producer, writer, actor, been in your own movies, they're about you. But I mean, you've tackled some topics that really cause people to think. You've got Bigger, Stronger, Faster with the mystique of steroid use. You got Trophy Kids about overbearing parents in sports, which we know exists, but then
we see it all the time.
Yeah, but you put a light on it. I mean, I think
it's kind of before the whole crazy Karen thing, there was like those crazy sports parents and everybody sort of knew about that.
Yeah.
And now it's crazy Karens. We want to see what the crazy white ladies do. But
exactly.
But before that, the source of entertainment was like going to somebody's baseball game and watching them verbally abuse like a kid, and then you just want to kill the guy,
Yeah. Well, it's interesting when Gina and I watch Prescription Thugs, because of her, she's had four battles with 4 different cancers. In 2016, she suffered cardiac arrest and passed away while I was doing CPR until the first responders brought her back with the 3rd hit with the defibrillator. And so she was in a coma for a week until she could, regain all of her functionality, speaking, breathing, everything. I mean, she's made pretty much a full recovery minus having a weaker heart than we do. But that film, Prescription Thugs, really stood out to us because of the amount of prescription medicine she's had to be on. And it was interesting. We were just finding that anything for her, they put out a prescription before asking her questions. And so I think, from that standpoint, to find out that, I don't know what it was, 95% of prescription drug uses in America. I mean, it was an outrageous number. And we started questioning some of the things that were prescribed to her. And that film really helped us to think outside of the box, because when a doctor prescribes something, you take it as gospel. And so she was being put on things that weren't right based on her condition. And we found that out later. But it was interesting to have your eyes open like that. I mean, then you jump into a leaf of faith, talking about kratom, bringing awareness to somebody, something new out there to help with pain. And all of these things you've experienced,
it's just something, it's something different. And I do get a lot of blowback on certain things too. Like, you come out and talking about kratom, people say, well, it's unproven. It's well, look, all the drug companies want it to be unproven. They don't want it to work. Like, you have to understand that there's forces battling against these things as well. It's not just like
that's right.
Kratom is good or bad. Kratom is actually doesn't cause people to go out and commit crimes. It doesn't damage your respiratory system. It doesn't cause respiratory depression, which is what kills people from opioids. It's not causing people to lose their jobs. It's not causing people to be lazy. So I would think it's even less damaging than marijuana, which is now sweepingly being legalized, which I actually believe in. I use it a lot. I think it's fine. I stopped drinking and using prescription drugs 7 years ago, right? And people like to use the term sober, but I don't use the term sober because I don't feel like I am sober. Like, I use marijuana. I use lately, and one of the things I'm going to be talking about, hopefully in an upcoming film, is psychedelics. I think that psychedelics are the future of pain relief, the future for cancer patients for pain, the future for end of life decisions for people in chronic pain and with cancer. Also, so I found a drug called Ibogaine, and the interesting thing about Ibogaine, and I made a short film on it. It's on YouTube. It's called Ibogaine's, or it's actually, you can even go on my Instagram TV at Big Strong Fast. And like 2 posts ago, if you go on my IGTV, you can watch it. It's a 15-minute short film about a tree bark from South Africa. They literally scrape the lining from a tree, and that's what you ingest. And it gets you high for anywhere from 2 to 5 days. And basically, you're in a lucid dreaming state. And when you come out of that, so I've had, I had both of my hips replaced. I've had chronic pain. So, and since then, I've had really bad bouts of chronic pain, almost to the point where it's like suicidal, where you're just like, what am I going to do? I'm not going to kill myself. This is too much to deal with. And I did Ibogaine and came out of Ibogaine. I'm like, I have never felt this way in my entire life. I have never been pain-free until I did Ibogaine. And I stayed, I want to be honest about it. I don't want to say I did it and it was a miracle and it cured me forever. I did it, and honestly, I was completely pain-free for about 6 months. And I never knew what it was like to wake up and feel like get shot out of a cannon, and now there's things that can revitalize that. Like, you can do what they call boosters of Ibogaine. So you can do a much lesser dose that doesn't take you out for 5 to 7 days. You can do one that you can just do a booster dose to where you might be out of commission for 12 hours, which is a lot easier for people to handle. So I think somebody with extreme chronic pain, especially like a cancer patient or whatever, the only problem with Ibogaine that we have to be careful of is, because you were just talking about heart issues. If somebody has a heart arrhythmia or a heart problem, they definitely need to be monitored while they're doing it, because there can be some issues with the heart. But other than that, Ibogaine is a pretty safe and effective drug treatment for first of all, the one thing that it's used for is it completely wipes out opioid addiction. So if you're addicted to heroin and you do Ibogaine, the next day, you're literally you don't crave heroin anymore. It's really, really crazy, because I also, you probably remember, I chewed tobacco back all through college, all after college. I did it for 30 years. And I quit chewing tobacco the day after I did Ibogaine. And that's been sort of a lifelong habit that I was just thought was kind of nasty and wanted to get rid of. I was just sort of hooked on it. And I just stopped doing it, and that, to me, that's a miracle, that to have
Absolutely.
substances like that. I've also messed around with psilocybin mushrooms, which I think are going to be really useful in helping people, even such things as, like, I posted on my Instagram the other day, they're doing a study to curb obesity because psilocybin mushrooms just make you not want to eat. And as much as I've learned about nutrition in the past couple of years, I've been on this path to just sort of learn everything I can know about nutrition. I've learned that the old adage of calories in, calories out is actually what actually matters. I went through this whole thing of like doing keto and carnivore diet, which is an all meat diet, and then coming back around and like, no matter what diet you do, every diet really just reduces your calories. And what way can you do that best? Can you do that best through intermittent fasting, which is like a condensed eating window? Can you do that best through keto? Can you do that best through just eating meat? Or can you do that best by just restricting your calories? And a lot of people just have a problem restricting their calories. They eat too many things like breakfast cereal, makes you want to eat more breakfast cereal, right? But if you eat things like red meat, you don't want to eat a whole, you just can't eat that much of it. So you don't eat that much. And so you eat less. And so I think things like that, especially also with the cancer stuff, we should definitely talk about cancer and nutrition, because regardless of like I said, diet and weight loss is one thing, but we found some really interesting stuff with cancer and remission in cancer from people like Dominic D'Agostino down in University of Central Florida. I've also interviewed a couple people about that have had brain cancer and literally have shrunk the size of their tumors and got their cancers to go into remission
based
with
on
a
diet.
ketogenic, based on a really high fat ketogenic diet. And that work would be like Dominic D'Agostino and a guy named Thomas Seyfried, who wrote a book that cancer is a metabolic disease. And he actually believes that cancer is not necessarily something that people just get. It's something as a result of their metabolism. And that's kind of a far out there thought in a lot of the cancer world, but it seems that the people that are fixing their nutrition seem to be also, I wouldn't say treating their cancer, but helping to treat their cancer.
Yeah. It's interesting because you have people coming out of the woodwork to share insights with you. I mean, even back in the bigger, stronger, faster days, which was 13 years ago, I was impressed with how many interviews you had in there with people sharing their ideas. And that's continued on. I mean, you have people sharing groundbreaking ideas with you that's not getting out there through any other source. And I gotta ask you this. I feel that the impact you're making with these films is life enhancing for so many people. But what gets you up and motivates you every day? Because when we went to school, you were always one of the most energetic, fired up, positive, upbeat people I've ever met in my entire life. But you're on a pathway to educate us to a better lifestyle. And why so much focus on that? Like, what is your motivating factor to do that?
I think things in life are hard to achieve. I wish I knew when I was coming, like, honestly, like what I just told you about, like calories in, calories out, that like, this is stuff that I've learned. This is stuff I learned over 20 years. I wish somebody just sat me down and said, like, the problem is it's in America, it's so hard to get to the truth. Like, where are you going to fact check shit now? Like, where are you going to fact check anything? Because everybody's lying. So whether you're a Democrat or a Republican, you don't know. I don't know where to stand on politics. I don't know who's telling me the truth. I don't know where to stand on anything, especially nutrition, because the keto people are trying to sell me one book, and then the vegan people are trying to sell me another book. And then over here on the environmental side, the meat eaters are trying to sell me one idea that meat's fine, the environment's fine. And then on the other side, they're trying to sell me that meat's destroying the environment, and we need to get rid of it. And I'm going like, okay, well, Bill Gates is over on this side telling me we need to get rid of it. Oh, but Bill Gates also owns, like 40% of Beyond Meat and Impossible Burger. So maybe he's got a reason to tell me that, and then like you look over on this side and go, oh, well, the commodity beef market, they have a vested interest in telling me that it's not destroying the environment.
That's right.
And actually, it's the regenerative grass-fed community that should be rising up and we need to do more of that kind of stuff and less of the commodity factory farming to actually better the environment. So like, no one's ever telling you the truth, and it's hard to drill down to the truth. And I think for me, that's what it is like being so frustrated over the years of just always trying to get to the truth and nobody ever telling me the truth. And then I find the truth and I go, why didn't it? Like, I did Ibogaine I struggled so hard in rehab for 90 days, like literally like hanging by my fingernails, trying to get through rehab and not have a drink or not, because I got so addicted to alcohol and so addicted to pills because I was in so much pain.
Yeah.
And nobody stopped once and said to me, Chris, listen, there's this stuff called Ibogaine. It's a little bit risky, but it's going to be way easier than going to rehab for 90 days. It's going to only take 5 days. You're going to be completely over drinking, and then you can start your life again. And I wish somebody just told me that, because I would have been like, shit, man, I have
I'll
this
take that.
90, and yeah, exactly. And it's like, I never even got the opportunity. Now, I'm not saying that that would have definitely worked. It doesn't always just work for people. Sometimes people look at it as like, some things are too easy. And when some things come too easy, we tend to squander them. I actually squandered the pain relief, I should say, of Ibogaine, because somebody told me that Ibogaine was going to help reduce my pain a lot. It was going to help. What it does is resets your pain receptors in your body. So you no longer, like, if your knee hurts, you're going to limp, because in your subconscious is telling you your knee hurts, protect it. Your knee hurts, protect it. Right. When you lose that neural pathway, all of a sudden you're like, you just take that step, and it's weird. Like, you're like, wait a second, that doesn't even hurt anymore.
But it's interesting that it's given different names. When Gina had cancer, breast cancer, so she had non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. That was her first cancer. One of the treatments was radiation, which didn't work. But it came back 10 years later to give her breast cancer. But the breast cancer was, I gave her a parting gift. And the breast cancer was considered secondary because it didn't necessarily stem from the milk ducts, it stemmed from the radiation. But they immediately prescribed her, I want to say it was called tamoxifen. And so they said, this is a breast cancer fighter. So of course, if you have breast cancer, you want the breast cancer fighter. It makes total sense. Well, it affected everything from her mood to her weight to you name it. Every side effect, she experienced it. So when we told the doctor, he says, no, you just need to stay on it. We went and found another doctor. He said, nah, you need to stay on it. We finally found a third guy. And he said, well, it's really only going to help her maybe 2% chance because it's secondary cancer. And then as I was looking it up, this tamoxifen isn't a breast cancer fighter. It's an estrogen receptacle blocker, and also a known carcinogen. So, which can give you like minor incidents of uterine cancer. So when I ran this by the third doctor, I just asked him a simple question. I said, if it was your wife, based on this history, what would you do? He goes, I wouldn't have her on it. And so it was interesting that what was a estrogen receptacle blocker was also called a breast cancer fighter to support that narrative.
Yeah, I think people actually take that drug in bodybuilding. I want to say that sounds familiar for gyno. Like when you take too much testosterone, your estrogen shoots up, and then you take that to block the estrogen. But it's actually known to be dangerous for your heart and for, like you said, a known carcinogen. I think two people I think that I should recommend for you to have on your podcast, and I could probably put you in touch with them, would be Dominic D'Agostino and perhaps Victoria Field. So my friend Victoria, she runs a place called she runs a whole conference called the Metabolic Health Conference. And the whole thing is really geared around her work with the Keto Pet Sanctuary down in Austin, Texas. And the Keto Pet Sanctuary took the sickest dogs in America, basically with cancer. They took like 43 dogs. And I think I want to say that they put all but like 1 or 2 of them in remission with their cancer through a ketogenic, like high-fat ketogenic diet, which is obviously, like, a dog should have a pretty ketogenic diet anyway because they're carnivores, but they just really up the fat, and it seemed to really help. And so, like I said, I don't know how these things are going to bear out in human beings, but I do know that we have seen a lot of the bottom line, and this, is that most cancers, not all, but many cancers, I should say, feed off of glucose. And the whole idea is, if you can starve the body of glucose and you keep your protein low enough so that you're not having your protein also turn into glucose, that you can sort of keep cancer at bay for a while you're treating it. And it seems to be beneficial. And like I said, I would never go out of my way to say, like, go and say that it cures cancer or anything like that. But we're seeing people have miraculous treatment results with it. I would say like, let's take a look at it. So
we want to at least have the edge, or at least have the knowledge. I mean, here's what I love about your films. You do the research for us. You're helping to get the information out there. I'm blown away at the direction that your films go in and the education it gives us, because it gives us a choice and put something else on the table, because we're force fed all of these other options, and we need to be exposed to some of the truth out there. And I think, what's interesting is I know that you've got another film that you're working on coming up here. At least it's in pre-production, I think, which might go back into, I didn't want to say it earlier, but you have a few titles: filmmaker, writer, producer, director, but you also listed yourself as a certified meathead.
Yeah. Well, it's actually the title of possible title of my next film, a film I'm working on. So filmmaking is really difficult, as you know. It's not like in this. So I feel like I'm at a weird stage where it's like I either need to figure out how to just start making stuff and putting it on the internet and have it be my own, or do I stay in this sort of treadmill that I'm in of like I don't like the treadmill I'm in, because like I'm not like a Netflix filmmaker. Like Netflix doesn't call me up and say, we want you to make a movie about this. I'm not that kind of guy. I'm not like a hired gun. I'm kind of like, I pick a subject because it finds me.
Yeah.
Like nobody's going to make the psychedelic movie. Like I was just thinking today that I want to make this psychedelic movie. And I have Bigger, Stronger, Faster. And I'm like, I need to make Bigger, Stronger, Faster for the brain, basically. So it's like, it's almost like I don't know what to call the movie yet, but I was thinking maybe calling it Higher. This is your brain on steroids, because like that's kind of what
I love
feel
your titles though. I love your titles.
Like it's the idea that I did the movie about steroids for enhancing your performance, but what if you could like what would the human mind is the most expandable, amazing thing on our planet, I think. And if like big deal, you can grow a big body, like you can grow big muscles. What can we do with our minds? Like obviously, like you have people like Elon Musk, that shows you what a brain on steroids can do.
That's
so to me, that's really fascinating, is like, where can we get with these psychedelics? Where can we get with these different things? And like I said, like you said, I'm a self-professed meathead, but why am I the only person on the planet? Not the only person, but I'm probably one of 10 people on the planet that knows that there's a drug out there called Ibogaine, and Ibogaine can kill chronic pain. How come I'm the only one that knows that when we have a giant opioid epidemic? How come I'm the guy? Like that's what's so weird to me.
It is weird.
What like Hamilton Morris is a documentary filmmaker. He's also like a big drug guy, and he was just on Joe Rogan the other day, and he was talking about some sort of like drug thing, and he's like, how come me as a high school kid was the only person that knew this? And I'm like, I feel the same way about like the drug I'm studying.
Yeah.
Like how come, like he's like, why don't scientists know this? This is so weird. Like how can people not know about this? And I feel the same way. I feel like how there's all these smart people out there. They're way smarter than me. I consider myself like middle of the road, but yet, like you said, and maybe it's because I'm privy to all this information because of what I do, I get all sorts of weird things sent to me every single day. And when those things get sent to me, I actually look at them. A lot of times it's crazy people sending me crazy things, but every once in a while something comes across your desk where you're like, okay, I got to look into this.
Jumps out at you. Yeah, I was going to say, you touched down on topics that I'm sure you received some feedback from people that would call it controversial, but you're still blazing a trail for the rest of us. You're opening up our minds to what's out there. And I think that takes a lot of courage.
And going to what I said, it takes a lot of courage. So we were just talking about Meathead. So I have this movie that I'm working on called Meatheads, and it's sort of about my brother and I's journey, basically journey through life and lifting, and how important it is that we eat meat all the time. How important it is, how important meat is to the ecology of the planet. How meat positively contributes to our environment. If we were to kill all the cows, pigs, sheep, everything that we eat right now, it would have, first of all, have a devastating effect on our planet. If we just let them all like die off and we didn't eat them, would have a devastating effect to the emissions of the planet, right? Because all those animals would be
Right.
alive for all that time. But
Yep.
also the health of people would severely decline. I mean, we are people that have evolved by eating meat. You know, we didn't evolve to eat meat. We evolved by eating meat.
Yeah.
We also evolved by eating plants. So we've eaten both of these things all throughout the history of humankind. There's no reason to sort of just stop, you know, eating meat. And what effects will that have? And the effects could be really detrimental, not only for our human health, but also for the planet as a whole. And I think a lot of people think like, okay, well, we're just, you know, we're just killing plants. Plants don't have feelings and blah blah. They have shown that plants do have feelings. I don't want to even argue that point. I think it's kind of a moot point and it's kind of stupid. But let's just say, who cares if they have feelings or not? When you till the soil, you kill so many animals in the process of doing that. So many rodents, so many bugs. So are we putting
The
a
whole
priority
ecosystem's
on
affected.
exactly? So are we putting a priority on like basically you're saying that a cow is more important than a mosquito, right? And people,
Right.
well, a cow's got a bigger brain, and it does, but it doesn't. It's not. They're not that smart. You know what I mean? I could see the argument for like for pigs and different things.
Sure.
And also the other thing with cattle that I want to really explain is like I ate a really high diet. I ate a really high red meat diet. That's because those are ruminant animals. We had 90 million ruminant bison on our country in the U.S.
Yep.
And we killed those off to starve the Indians, right? Actually, it was 70 million bison, I believe, that we killed. We killed those off to starve the Indians. We have since replaced that with about 90 million cattle, which are smaller than bison. So it's about equal. So we haven't really raised. You know, we talk about like all this raising of greenhouse gases and all these things. We really haven't raised it. We kind of just equaled it back out to where when we had the bison there. And also like those things are very natural. What's not natural is our automobiles, our cars. I saw a farmer on TikTok who had the funniest, Bill Gates bought up 2/3 of all the farmland in America. And he also bought up, you know, 2/3 of like the fake meat companies. So something weird is going on there.
Yeah.
And he's trying to get us to move to eating like lab grown meat, which I don't think he has any sinister master plan necessarily.
Right.
I just do think it's a move that he thinks is good that probably isn't just well thought out enough. But I saw a farmer say, I'm going to do a little experiment here. I'm going to lock myself in my barn with my cow. And I want Bill Gates to lock himself in his garage with his car running. And we're going to see which one lasts longer. And you're like, to see which one's destroying the planet.
That's right.
And you're like, okay, this guy's got a great point.
Point made. Yeah.
One car weighs about 2,500 pounds. One cow weighs about 2,500 pounds. Which one's producing the more deadly emissions?
That's right.
You know, the cow burps, or is it the automobile? And you just find out, like, you start thinking like, okay, that's a stupid comparison, right? You'll just instantly die with the car, but like, think about it.
But it makes sense.
What we're doing to the planet.
I mean,
yeah, it makes sense.
And the thing is that what a great time. I don't know when the release date is for Meatheads, but what a great time for it, because you got to get people thinking. Right now, everything is plant-based. They're pushing plant-based on everything. And here you are coming out saying, hey, we've got to go more red meat.
Well, we already eat plant-based. We eat a 70% meat, 70% plant-based diet. So if people are pushing plant-based, show me where it's worked. You know, show me the studies, show me the facts to say, hey, look, if we eat a more plant-based diet. Now, what people mean, I think what people mean and what they say are like two different things. So when they say plant-based, they're not real. Like, I would say a smart doctor that's telling you to eat plant-based is telling you to eat fresh fruits and vegetables.
Right.
We misconstrue that because an Oreo is plant-based, that like an Oreo is actually vegan. So that could be on a plant-based diet.
Sure.
But that's bullshit, because we know that that's not good for you.
That's
so
right.
I would say like a good smart doctor would say to eat things that are whole from the earth. And that's what I've come around to. Like, I was a really heavy proponent of a low carb diet. Now I'm just more of a proponent of eating a good amount of protein. And I like to keep my carbs low because I'm a pig. So like, I know where my weak spots are.
Yeah.
I think we have to be accountable to that. And we have to know, like, if you love pizza so much that you can't handle it, then maybe you have to restrict it to like having it once a week or once a month.
Yeah.
Because you'll, like, if you have it every day, you might eat a whole, like, I'll eat a whole pie if I ate it every day. I just would.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I can't just have one. If I
That's
could
right.
have one slice of pizza, I could probably eat one slice of pizza every day, not get fat.
Yeah.
But I don't work that way. I don't think you
I'm
do
with you
either.
on
I've
that.
been with you.
Yeah, I've got no self-control on some foods, so I just have to cut them out and then have them every once in a while. You know?
Yeah.
But you know, I think that are you expecting some pushback when you release Meatheads? Or before people
Oh
even
yeah.
see it, they're gonna already judge it, right?
Yeah, I think the way to really not have pushback is to provide people with the best answers and to provide them with the best people. So, um, I so here's what happens in, like, in life and in filmmaking, and I want people to understand that this isn't a bad thing. I actually started making a movie. I got funding, and I started making a movie about the ketogenic diet about I want to say about 4 years ago. And it started with me and my brother wanting to make a movie about nutrition. I had just finished A Leap of Faith. Like, okay, what are we going to do next? Okay, let's do a movie on keto. And I
Mhm.
went in and I interviewed every single keto person that I could possibly find. You said, you know, I love how you have all these interviews. Well, I must have interviewed 30 of the top keto people in the entire world.
Okay.
Interviewed them about cancer, interviewed them about everything to do with keto. When I got to the end of it, I'm like, this isn't the thing. Like,
Mm.
unfortunately, like, this isn't the information I want to put out. Like, this isn't actually correct. So a lot of the tools that my brother and I were using were correct. Like, we came up with a hashtag that we use, and I'll always use it because I believe in tools, like dietary interventions
Yep.
as tools. So we use what we call a hashtag war on carbs, right? Because I always talk about the war on drugs. And I'm like, the war on drugs wasn't successful, but if you launch a war on carbs, you can be successful in your
That's
weight
right.
loss goals, because most people overeat carbohydrates. Most people in my category. So I'm not saying that
Yeah.
I know how it sounds from the outside. This
Yep.
guy's saying carbs are bad, don't eat them. But I'm not saying that, but what I am saying is, if you absolutely remove them from your diet and you eat good quality protein and good quality fats, the weight will drop off you like you've never seen it
Yeah.
before. And then you can return to eating a normal diet and incorporate some carbs later on. But this little 3 month war on carbs period, that's when we're going to go balls to the wall
That's
and we're
right.
going to strip all the fat off you. And I know that it works because I've done it a million times. Anytime I get a little pudge, I just launch a little war on carbs, and I do it. And would it work to do intermittent fasting at that time? Yes, it would work.
Yeah.
It would work in the same exact way, as long as the calories and protein are matched. Would it matter if I said, hey, it's a war on calories, and I'm going to limit myself to 2,000 calories every day for the next 3 months? That would work also. And 95% of the health benefits of any program comes from actually just losing weight.
That's right.
One really simple way that everybody listening to this can drop their weight and drop their blood glucose, which is very important, especially people teetering on diabetes or who
Yeah.
are diabetic or pre-diabetic, is to simply walk. This is so easy. So listen, simply just take a walk, a 10-minute walk. It's literally a hashtag on Instagram that my brother and I started, hashtag 10-minute walk. You take a 10-minute walk, you get your friends to take a 10-minute walk. If you eat 3 times a day, that's 3 10-minute walks a day. That's 30 minutes of exercise that you wouldn't normally get.
Yep.
And when you do it directly after your meal, it plummets your blood glucose sometimes in half. So if your blood glucose is like 150 after a meal, sometimes it gets up to 200 on people. Sometimes it even gets up into 300 if you're diabetic. So if it gets up to 300 and you go for a walk and it goes down to 150, well, guess what? That's a great way to maintain your metabolism and actually keep your metabolism in check over time.
So basically, you got three main meals a day. You go out and do a 10-minute walk after each meal.
Yeah, it's not a miracle by
Yeah.
any means,
Yep.
but it's just going to help you feel better. And it's going to help
I
you
love it.
cut your blood glucose down. It's just like one of those
So simple.
one of those little tips. Like another simple tip, if you want to eat optimally, is you need to increase your protein. I think a lot of people don't look at protein hardcore enough. And
Right.
there's a simple rule from a guy that I know named Ted Naiman that I really like, because it keeps energy balance in mind. It keeps calories in mind. If you take a food and you look at any package and you take the protein and you multiply it by 10, and it's that number is greater than the amount listed as calories. So say you have something says 27 grams of protein, but it's only got 200 calories. Well, that's perfect to eat because you do 270s more than 200, right?
Yep.
And so then things that are like the further away you get from that ratio, the sort of worse that food's going to be for your metabolism, right? And it's not foolproof. It's like, yeah, there's better sources of protein and worse sources of protein. But like if you're in a 7-Eleven and you're like, should I eat this protein bar or not? Is it going to make me fat? If that's the question, is it excess calories? Well, it's only excess calories if the protein's too low. Because the more you jack up your protein, the more you're going to be jacking up your metabolism. And the one steadfast rule that I found, the only rule that I found in the history of health and fitness to actually be true, and I still am trying to disprove it because I always try to disprove things, is that in order to gain muscle, you need to eat 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight. So I weigh like 200 pounds. If I want to add more muscle, I got to eat, but I'm also only 180 pounds of lean muscle. So if I want to actually put on muscle, I need to eat more than 180 grams of protein a day. That's kind of the only rule that I found to be like, beyond that, everything, beyond that, everything else is always so debatable. I mean, even now, how many rules have you seen with COVID, right? How many times, I don't know if you listen to Joe Rogan, but I love Joe Rogan.
Yeah.
I've been on there several times. My brother and I are friends with him. He's a great dude, but there's a lot of misinformation being spread, not necessarily by Joe, but even by the doctors that are on there. They're saying, take vitamin D, take zinc, take this, take that, because they want to sound like they're a professional and they know.
That's right.
But guess what? None of that shit works. I mean, I just did a retweet of one of my friends who, his name's Kevin Bass. He does a lot of, I think it's really important to follow people like, if you're into nutrition, Kevin Bass on Twitter, Lane Norton on Twitter, who's at BioLane. These guys do, a lot of people think they're negative because they're like, oh, that guy's an a-hole because he's shooting down every idea.
Yeah.
They're just shooting down things that aren't true.
Right.
So Kevin Bass just posted a thing about vitamin D and how he went through this randomized controlled trial. And he looked at all these people taking vitamin D and it really had no effect on COVID. So you have all these people, like especially Joe Rogan, make sure you're taking 10,000 milligrams of vitamin MCG or IUs of vitamin D a day. How many IUs of vitamin D do you think that podcast is sold that are completely unnecessary? And if it's unnecessary, so here's the other thing. If vitamin D is unnecessary and it raises we know for a fact what vitamin D doesn't necessarily raise your vitamin D levels, it raises your calcium levels. So what happens when you raise your calcium levels? That's what clogs your arteries. So are people taking this in a COVID, rage and causing heart disease? Who knows, man?
I mean, everything, it goes back to Newton's third law of motion. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. And
you know what?
I think
those rules you can't get around.
That's right. And I think that people just jump on the action so fast, they never think about the reaction. I mean,
I think that goes a long way into why I am the way I am, because I'm that guy. Like I jump on everything. I get excited, and then I have to feel like an idiot and retract everything that I've said. And as I've gotten older and hopefully wiser, I've sort of stopped doing that. And that's why we didn't put out a keto movie. Like I literally pumped the brakes on a movie that I had about $300,000 in funding for. I spent about $300,000 on.
Yeah.
And luckily my brother's cool and has the same mission as I do. And that's another thing we should talk about is,
I was going to say, Mark has the steak shake out, doesn't he?
Yeah. So I don't know. We haven't talked actually in so long. But my younger brother, Mark, who, as we were coming up, was just a meathead power lifter. He was always the younger brother. He was always quiet, never really said much of anything. But he always had his head down and he was always digging, and basically through a series of trials and errors with powerlifting, he went from being a power lifter. He kept tearing his pec. So his chest muscle, he kept tearing literally right off the bone. And he did that 3 times, trying to bench press 600 pounds. And he's like, well, I'm never going to get to bench press 600 pounds if I can't, if I can't fix this problem. And so he basically, in order to bench these heavy weights, these guys wear these crazy bench shirts. You remember, you've seen them. They're these crazy tight shirts, and they sort of hold your shoulders forward. And they just allow, it's kind of cheating in a way, and actually powerlifting's gone away from that. So it helps you bench press more weight without getting hurt, but it's also kind of cheating. It'll put like up to 250 pounds on some people's bench press, right? But it's just the way the sport has gone. So the sport went that way, and my brother was like, wait a second, the only part of this shirt that's actually doing something is like this upper body part. What if I just made that? And so we invented this band called the Slingshot, and went from, I call him Meathead Millionaire, because my brother is literally the smartest idiot you'll ever meet. And when I say idiot, when I say idiot, I mean it with love. In all honesty, and not to ever disparage my brother, he was learning disabled all growing up. So I wouldn't say idiot in a way like that at all.
I know what you mean.
I would never make fun of him in that way for any reason. I'm just saying he's a meathead. He loves to lift. He loves to train. He loves to, he loves, he's a man's man, And so for him to go and invent something was so kind of far out of left field. And, he did really well with it. And then he went and he created, for the hips, he created the hip circle, which is basically a slingshot for your lower body. It's just something you put around your knees. And you'll see literally every influencer on Instagram. My brother brought the slingshot to Nike, to Under Armour. They had no idea what he was talking about. Well, now Nike makes, they can't make a slingshot because he patented it, but he couldn't patent the hip circle because it was too simple of an idea. A lot of people were using rubber bands to do like leg workouts, like like hip extensions and stuff like that. So my brother basically just made a more comfortable cloth band, and you'll see every influencer on Instagram now has their own. They call them booty bands, or they call, it's really called the hip circle. My brother invented it, and he actually is at a point where he's done so well that he laughs when he sees like rip off. Like when I was didn't want to say, I didn't have the heart to send him an ad from Amazon to show that Nike made a hip circle. I was like, I don't know if I should send this to Mark or not. I sent it to him, and he writes back, haha, I always get the last laugh. I'm like, last laugh? Nike like totally stole your product, but like he doesn't care because he's done so well. And that's just awesome to see. And he's also somebody who I think I inspired his whole life, and now he kind of inspires me. And it's
all coming
a really
full
cool
circle.
Relationship. Yeah, it's a really cool relationship we have. And also, when I was down and out and doing drugs every day, my brother was the only one that really cared and said, this isn't you. What are you doing? Like, and sort of helped pull me out of that. So I think that was really important to have that relationship.
I mean, both of you guys are making such a positive impact on people. I mean, it's beyond the products, it's beyond the movies. I think you're giving people a different perspective, and bringing some truth with some facts, which is almost non-existent in today's world.
And I also think people need to realize that you can't save everyone, right? I don't know if you know this, but more recently, my mom passed away. And I don't know if have you ever got a chance to meet my mom? I don't know if you ever met her or not.
You know what? Gina and I actually met her in an event years back.
She was always everywhere.
Yeah, she was so sweet. Yeah, Rosemary.
She's like the nicest lady, right, in the world. And she was such an inspiration to Mark and I, and sort of behind the reason why we did everything that we did. I mean, you know that. And so with my mom, she was severely overweight, and she had a really bad problem with her knee. Her knee hurt her really bad to the point where she was on a walker and she couldn't walk. And she had like a tumor that was behind her knee, and it wasn't cancerous or anything. So the only way they could get rid of it is to do a complete knee replacement. But they thought because she's so heavy, if they do a knee replacement, like she might not be able to handle it and all these other problems, right? So I tried to help her a lot. And the first thing I did was get her to go on a ketogenic diet. Mark and I both, like, we hammered her on it, but diet's a tough spot when somebody's grown up with abuse in their family. So she grew up, with both physical and mental abuse and alcoholic parents. So it's really hard to get somebody out of that mindset. And literally her father would tell her she's fat, like these really horrible things that like we just can't tell children. It's just abuse, is what it is. Things to the point where, like, my grandfather passed away, none of us went to his funeral. Like, we didn't give a shit. We didn't care. That sucks.
Yeah.
And that sucks for my mom, because my mom, even though my mom had that storied history with him, she still loved him. And that's sad to see. Because you're like, how can you love this guy? Look what he did to you,
Yeah.
But on the flip side, my mom, she found God and she found church, and she could do all those things. And so she really believed in herself. And so when she wanted to do something, she could do it. So we got her on a ketogenic diet, and she lost like 80 pounds. And it was amazing. It was amazing to see her like lose all this weight. She was feeling great. But then the pain and I know this because this happened to me, the pain just becomes too much. And after a while, you're doing everything right and you're still feeling shitty. And after a while, it just catches up to you. You're like, you know what? Screw it. I'm going to go back. She loved, like, it's weird because the things that she loved to eat weren't really that bad. Like, she loved pretzels. She loved like Cheez-Its and things. And so I found things to substitute for those to get her by for a while. But after a while, she just went back to eating pretzels and Cheez-Its. And then that turned into eating candy at night. And it would turn into this thing where she could eat good for, like, most of the day. But then, like, once the sun went down, she'd be shut, like, eating all. And that's the worst time to eat fat.
That's
right?
Yeah.
So she basically went back to her old habits, and it killed her. And, she died of a heart attack.
Sorry to hear that.
I get it. I mean, it's really it's really been tough for our family, but it's also one of those things where my dad was taking care of her every day. My dad's quality of life was, like, in the garbage. Because of that, our relationship with our dad was bad, So in all honesty, it's kind of what had to happen. And it sucks to say that, but sometimes it just gets to that point where you can't help everybody and you can't save everybody. And that's a message that I just want to convey to everybody. If you're trying to help somebody and you can't, just realize that you can't save everybody, and it's not your fault. Because I think, honestly, if it wasn't for my experience with using some of these psychedelics, that I wouldn't have been able to handle the death of my mother so well. But when she died, I actually did a psychedelic treatment the very next day, and I had an epiphany, which may or may not have come anyway. But my epiphany was, wait a second, your mother has helped millions of people. Your mother was in a movie. It's not often that you can say, hey, my mom has helped millions of people.
That's right.
She's been in a movie. Like, everybody knows my mom. So whether or not you got a chance to meet her, but whether you got to meet her or not, when I went into William Morris to get my first agent, I walked in and the girl hugged me, and she's like, oh, that was kind of unprofessional, but I just feel like I know you. I know your mom. I know your family. Like, And I was like, no, it's totally fine. That's how I am anyway, And I think that goes a long way into the way that people see us as a family and see us as being able to help people. Is like they feel comfortable around us.
I think, your openness with sharing your story, sharing the challenges, sharing your vulnerability, I think that's what makes your message so well received. As a business coach, I teach on different things now. So I'll teach leadership development or strategic planning or sales, but I always start with my story. So I always start, I was in the Marine Corps. I went to USC's film school. I became a caregiver. And then I ran a media company, the old SMV days when you used to come by in Santa Monica. But, I really do feel that when I've spoken sometimes and I share, my wife's cancer battles or how we handled it when I was doing her CPR or all those things, there's a relatability, because I've had people come up and hug me afterwards. They said, I just feel like I need to give you a hug. Yeah. I mean, I think that what you're doing, Chris, I mean, you're probably
I think that about you all the time for what you've been through. Like, I'm like, man, that guy, like, I always just think like, man, you're a warrior. Like, every time something has ever hit you in the face, I've never seen you even once get down. Like, I'm sure you do get down about it. I've never seen you get down about it.
I think, I think that we all have our moments, right?
Yeah.
But I think I take a lot of the same mindset that you have, that we're just going to keep moving forward. And I look at it too, if I can share that story with somebody and make an impact, that's actually what gets me juiced up. That's what gets me fired up the most. And every time I've watched one of your films, I come out of there juiced up, fired up. I feel like I've been enlightened. I feel like I've had my perceptions enhanced, and that's so hard to do, to get up here in people. So many people are just locked in the way they think, and I can see that coming with Meatheads. I can certainly see that coming with the psychedelic side of things. I think that's, you've got Meatheads coming up, and I think you have another one too, Stronger. Is that?
You know what? That actually got put on hold. So like that's happened with so many of these things. Like I was gonna do a movie about the world's strongest man.
Yeah.
And I had like all these ends with all these guys. And I like things are cooperation, and it's so weird because you're gonna make a documentary about a sport that had like no money in it, no representation. And here's all the guys infighting with each other over what this movie is gonna be that I'm gonna make. Right. Like so all the people that were like either involved in the sport, it was mainly the people that were like that the organizers of the sport were like fighting over stuff. And I went and pitched them a movie, and they basically said, well, we're going to make your movie, but we're going to make it without you because we don't like the way you're going to make it. So check this out. My whole idea was the world's strongest man has two events. It has the world's strongest man and it has the Arnold every year. And I was going to start it at the Arnold because the Arnold is a smaller, it's a bigger event people wise. There's more people there, but it's a smaller event title wise. Like the world's strongest man is an important title. And so because I wanted to feature both, the people that were doing the Arnold didn't want me featuring world's strongest man because it undermined what the Arnold was, and then vice versa.
Yeah.
But I'm like, don't you guys understand this is your sport that you're in, So things can happen with movies that are just so weird. I actually have another interesting documentary that I just started kind of, a lot of these things are like getting the ball rolling. Like Meatheads, I have a ton of stuff that I shot and I can use for the movie, but I haven't actually started yet. It's like, once I actually get a budget and go, it'll be actually go very quick because I've been collecting stuff for this over the years. But another thing that I have a really interest in is I have a nephew who's 17, Mark's son, Jake. And Jake is in a school. Jake is a really smart kid. He just never really applied himself in school and never really cared. He's super smart.
Yeah.
Doesn't care. So one of our friends actually runs a school that has no curriculum. You might have heard of these schools. His school is called Acton Academy.
Okay.
And they're popping up all over the country. And basically you show up for school and it's like, okay, what do you guys want to do? Okay, we want to build a shed. Okay, cool. That's your project. Build a shed. Get the wood. Learn how to do it. Like they have to learn everything. Skills. Yeah, they have to get in a group and do everything. So actually, Jake, my nephew, right now, what he's doing is they're live streaming sports to like coaching stuff to kids. So they go out to like a coach's house. They set up cameras. They live stream it. The kids all do practice at home, and that goes. And they literally get paid for it, and they get to keep the money and use it for other projects and stuff. Right. That's awesome. So they have kids graduating from this high school that are going like right to Google, right to Amazon, right to like top level, jobs in these places, getting recruited at like 17, 18 years old. So what they want to do is they wanted to make a documentary. The owner of the school is a friend of ours. That's how we got Jake into the school. That's how Jake found out about it. And my brother couldn't be happier because now his son gets up every day and loves going to school.
Yeah.
Because he's not going to school. He's going to work. He's going to work on a film set basically every day.
That's right.
So when they said they wanted to do a movie, I'm like, I have a better idea. How about this? How about I produce the movie and the kids make the movie? So I think that's what we're going to do, to where like they have some money that they can use to actually make the movie. But it's like we could buy some cameras. I could take these kids out and like all around the country too. Like, I'm 48 years old. I'm a grown man. I'm an adult. I could take these kids to Austin, Texas to go shoot where Tim Kennedy, who's like a military MMA guy, he's opening an acting academy in Austin, Texas, right? Under a different name, I think, but it's one of these academies.
Yeah, yeah.
And so how awesome would it be to have my group of kids fly out to Austin and film that whole thing and supervise that. And for me, it's an easy job.
Yeah.
But it's also like a way to give back.
Well, and I think that's huge. The give back is huge. The experience that you're giving them is huge. real world experience. I mean, you know, all right, so there's some benefits to some curriculums and classes, but I think for the most part, it's not teaching kids to unleash their true potential. And
I walked into a classroom of five-year-olds, and they're having a meeting, and there's one little 5-year-old up in the front and said, "Okay, we're gonna have to take a vote on this." And I'm just like, I've seen enough. Like, I literally, like, I said to the guy that owns the school, I'm like, I've seen enough. I get it. This is way. He's like, there's a teacher in the class, but she's sitting in the back.
that's a lot better
And the
than we
little,
were doing at 5, Chris.
yeah, little kids like up there running the show and
Yeah.
like taking votes on things and doing things. And I'm going, this is actually really cool. These kids are empowered. And by
Yeah.
empowering these kids, like obviously they learn how to read and write, but they learn at their own pace and they learn to read with like what they want to read. Like there's one kid in there reading about motorcycles, and he's young kid, like reading about motorcycles.
Yeah.
Like that's a weird thing. He's like, that's what he's into, you know? So that's what we make him read.
I mean, look, the schools like this, the education you're giving us on nutrition and our own body, people need to hear more from you. I mean, you've got to crank out a lot more projects. I'm telling
Yeah, well,
you.
you know, it's funny because I always think that I don't know. I guess I'm probably my own worst critic, and I'm probably the reason why I don't crank out as much content. But I also don't want to be a bag of hot air. So I tend to like really be concerned with like fact checking things and being
Yeah.
right. Like I don't want to be wrong. And I think
Yeah.
that's one of my biggest holdups that I need to get over is the fact that like I probably should preface everything that like, hey, look, I could be wrong, but like for
Yeah.
example, we don't have any proof that vitamin D works for COVID. Does that mean it doesn't work for COVID? We just don't have any proof, is what I'm
Right.
saying. You know, if I end up being wrong down the road, like, look, if a ketogenic diet isn't good for cancer, did it kill anybody? Well, I hope not, but
Right.
I don't see it as anything negative. So I try to vet things out to the point where like it's not going to kill anybody.
Yeah.
For example, with Ibogaine, I really looked into Ibogaine, and I looked into the deaths from Ibogaine, and between like I think it was 1990 and 2008. That's a pretty long, 20 years of
Yeah.
time almost. So between in that period of time, there were 19 deaths from Ibogaine. I don't have any more recent studies than that. That's like all I could find. But in that time period specifically, there were 19 people that died from Ibogaine. When you go and you parse it all out and you look at it, every single person that died from Ibogaine was on heroin. They were drinking. They were,
There was other there's other
oh,
factors.
they were on some sort of bender.
Yeah.
And they took it. There's even been crazy rumors back in the day, like Hunter S. Thompson, I think was I want to say that somebody was running for governor or something, and Hunter S. Thompson accused them of being like on Ibogaine, or somebody accused him of being on Ibogaine, and it ruined like their congressional run because they're like, oh, this guy's addicted to Ibogaine, which is such an untruth because you actually can't be addicted to it. It has such like once you do it, you'll never want to do it again. So you see how like things get repeated in history and in time.
It just spirals out of control.
And things do that often. So I just like to try to not be wrong about things and provide good, valid information to people. I think we also need to get away from like the term like, does it work? Does this work? Does that work? Right? Like, because I think everything is really kind of context driven.
Yeah.
As well. And we definitely see like, I just think if you see a lot of these things in the media that were pushed, like they're pushed big time. One of them is CBD, for example. I have had tons of pain in my life, and I have taken gallons and gallons and gallons of CBD. I've gotten it from the top manufacturers. I've got it from people with special formulas. I've got it from everywhere. And I personally have not found relief with it. Does it mean that it doesn't work? Doesn't work for me, so I don't promote it. But I also know people that say it's changed their life and they sell it. Is it because they sell it, or is it because it changed their life and they sell it? The one guy that really sells a lot of it, I happen to believe him because he also owned a major supplement company. So but for some people, some things work better than others, and for some people, we have a non-response to it. So I try to balance those things.
I think you come across so genuine in your films. I think that people believe you, even if it's counterintuitive to the way they used to think. You know, we can be locked in on, well, I've got to be just like this. And then here you are shedding the light on a new topic. I think that desire to be right, or not to have to say you were wrong. I get where you're coming from on that as a coach, or even I had to be careful sharing our story early on, because I would say that one of the things that helped Gina when she had cancer was to set goals.
Yeah.
But I had to be careful coming across that goal setting cured cancer, because some people could take it that way.
Exactly.
So I said, let me just say this, goal setting isn't going to, fight cancer, but it just gets your mindset focused on a better future. So I just had to phrase it in a way where it didn't get me in trouble, because I was trying to share a positive attribute, how it worked for us, but you always have your naysayers out there.
Well, it could potentially treat cancer if the person doing, like, sets out those goals and they achieve those goals, it could particularly help that person. So it's hard to say, like, hey, this will treat this, or this will. I always like using the word treat too. Like, you'll notice that I say the word treat and I don't ever use the word cure.
Yeah.
Because I feel like cure is like, wow, you really, like, you better be serious if you say cure.
Yeah.
I haven't.
Yeah, that's at a whole different level.
Yeah, like when something's cured, it means it's gone for good.
Yeah.
And I haven't had anything that's cured anything, like, completely for good. It usually some stuff seems to come back if you go back to those same habits. That's the same thing with, like, even with Ibogaine, for example. You could take Ibogaine and the very next day you could decide. So when you take Ibogaine, example, for heroin, you're first of all, you won't be addicted to heroin anymore when you're done with it, but you still might have this weird desire to do it. Or say you have, like, some crazy girlfriend and you do Ibogaine, and you're at a resort or a hotel or wherever you're doing it at, because usually you do it somewhere other than your house.
Sure.
So you go somewhere and do Ibogaine, then you move right back in with that crazy girlfriend the next day, and she's shooting heroin, and you're like, oh well, I might as well shoot heroin too. What happens is, now that you're not addicted to it anymore and you've reset your receptors, you'll actually die from returning to the drug that you did. And so I like to tell people this: Ibogaine has an 80% success rate, which is high. That's
huge.
So the success rate of AA is 5%. The success rate of Ibogaine is 80%.
Wow.
With a caveat. That caveat's huge. The people who return to the same location and the same situation have an 80% relapse rate.
Wow.
So it's still 15% better than AA, right? Which I said in the first place. I wish somebody friggin' told me in the beginning. So it's still 15% better, but you could see the difference and those rates that could be a little bit subjective. That's some numbers I got off the internet, but basically, like, if you can cure something 80% by just telling people, like, look, just don't go back to where you were. Yeah. And then you have a 20% contingent of people that there's going to be people that you can't help. Like I said, you can't help everyone.
That's right.
Now, my older brother, Mad Dog, was kind of like such an addict that he was different than I was. So when I was an addict, I would seek things out, but then it got to a certain challenge, like, I don't want to drive 2 hours to get pills. I'll drive an hour, but I'm not going to drive 2 hours.
Right.
My brother would have drove 6 hours to get pills. You know what I mean? Like, so there's some people that you just can't help.
Yeah.
And I feel like my older brother, Mad Dog, who passed away, was one of them. And I feel at some point, my mom was one of them with food, where we just couldn't help.
I think we all have our addictions in different ways, I mean, that's
absolutely true.
Yeah. I think that my dad, he passed away in 2001.
He was the best, man.
He was awesome, huh?
He's a classic.
He's
just like your classic. He's just your classic dad. Like, you picture him in like a, I don't know, like a Chevy Chase movie or something.
Yeah.
He'd be like the dad or the grandpa.
And I don't think anybody ever liked Thanksgiving as much as him. And he loved having you out because you loved eating that turkey.
I love that guy. Yeah.
But he ended up passing away because of complications from diabetes. But you're exactly right. He reverted back to the patterns and habits that he had that he gained the weight. And then after he reverted back, because he had lost, he was in a diabetic.
He was always a pretty big guy.
Yeah. Yeah. And then when I was in the Marine Corps, he suffered a diabetic coma. And they actually transferred me to another unit so I could be with him because they thought he was going to die. And he actually pulled through.
He must have been pretty young then, huh?
Yeah, because that would have been in 1990, so that was right around the Gulf War time period. So he suffered that coma, and then he came out of it and he had gotten in pretty good shape. But like you said, he went back to patterns and behaviors that didn't serve him. And slowly it crept up on him. And then it was that second bout of getting into the bad patterns and habits that did him in,
I pray about my dad every single day, so my dad had a problem with his intestines. He's been like, so my dad does really, really well with everything we tell him. But what happened was he got in such a bad spot with my mom because my mom was always so sick. So what happened was my dad had this problem with his intestine, where his intestine burst, and he basically became toxic, became septic in his system, and he almost died. And so that was crazy, and that was back in I want to say that was 2015 maybe.
Yeah.
And he recovered from that. And when he recovered from that, he was in the hospital for 90 days. They basically told us make your last wish, he's going to die. He had 9 surgeries on his stomach. They didn't work. Finally had some guy, a doctor, come in that he had operate on him when he had stomach cancer a long time ago. That guy fixed him. Ever since then, my dad's been on basically an all meat carnivore diet, pretty much 90% meat and probably 10% fruit and vegetables. And that's what I eat. And when I say 90% meat, I mean mostly pretty lean meats. I always find things that are better. So I'm actually sponsored by a brand of beef called Piedmontese beef. And Piedmontese are really muscular cattle, and the meat's really tender and juicy, but it also has less than half the fat of a normal steak. So you get all the nutrients of ruminant animals. Red meat has way more nutrients than chicken or pork or fish. It's got basically all the vitamins and minerals you need in it. It's literally nature's multivitamin, a piece of steak. So I eat leaner meat, but my dad's been eating like that. That really helps heal your gut, and it helps clean up a lot of your insides, a lot of stuff going on inside. And so my dad's been on that sort of since he's had all these complications. But when he was taking care of my mom always wanted macaroni and cheese, and she wanted pizza, she wanted Chinese food because she was sick, And so my dad would fall into eating bad with her.
Yeah.
Ever since she's passed, he's been walking every single day, at least a mile. So him and my brother, I usually train early in the morning, but him and my brother, they get up and walk every day. My brother likes to, keep him company and keep him going. And I go over his house once or twice a week and barbecue. And basically our family is held together by eating meat and eating clean. I mean, me, my brother, and my dad pretty much are all on the same diet, which is pretty heavy on meat. Sometimes some protein shakes. Like I said, my brother just made a supplement called the Steak Shake, which is basically animal protein and organ meats in it, but it's delicious. That's coming out soon. And then fruits and vegetables, just simple apples, strawberries, blueberries, pineapple, things that I like to eat I try to get as seasonal as possible, but I do like pineapple, so I'll cheat with that sometimes. I just try to eat as clean as possible and try to get my family to do the same thing, because no matter what anybody says about diet or nutrition, you'll never get as close to health as you will with foods that just come directly from the planet. And the more those, look, is grass-fed beef better than grain-fed beef? We haven't seen any health outcomes that say that it is. But in my opinion, it's better for the animal, so it's better.
Yeah.
Right. So I try to look at things if I can afford it, if I can afford it and I like it, I'm going to eat it. So certain things that are organic that you don't need to buy organic, why would you buy an organic banana when it's got a half an inch thick of a peel on it? Why buy an organic avocado when it's got a thick peel on it? But maybe your apples and your blueberries and your strawberries, you might want to buy those organic because they're sprayed with pesticides and they're harder to wash off. So you just put some conscious thought into what you put into your body every day, because it's the most important thing we do every day.
Yeah, and we don't give it enough thought. But that's why we have your films, Chris. I mean, you're giving us these new thoughts. Another thing about your dad, speaking from a kind of a shared experience, when you are somebody's caregiver, you really stop taking care of yourself. It's
Yeah. I was
an
gonna say that's
incredible.
one thing I think you and my dad have in common. I see a lot of the same traits. My
Yeah.
dad had to take care of my mom, and like as much as you love that person, like as much as you love them with all your heart and soul, it is so hard. It weighs on you so much. So I can only imagine what you've gone through, you know?
Well, you know, it's interesting because I became a caregiver in like a 10 months after we got married. And
Yeah.
you know, so that's what we've known. So over the last 22 years ish, you know, I've been her caregiver through 4 different cancers, cardiac arrest.
Jesus.
But you think differently. So I understand, you know, how your dad was thinking. It's kind of all encompassing, and there's really no guidebook to it. Maybe there's a documentary in this, Chris. We'll tag team for a caregiver's journey
Yeah.
because people need to know about it. It's been a huge part of my life, and it impacts the way you think and act, but
My
there's no
dad would
handbook.
feel my dad would feel really guilty all the time because he would try to tell me like he would try to tell me without telling me that he's really frustrated. Like he didn't know how. He's like, look, I don't, because it's my mom, you know,
Yeah.
so he doesn't want to tell me anything that would make her sound bad.
Yeah.
But he'll be like, ah, like here's, you know, and it's like, you know, not to be gross or anything, but things can get gross when when you're
Sure.
taking care of somebody that can't take care of themselves. Things
It's
can get really gross, you
oh
know,
yeah,
and it's like, not to go into detail, but it can get to the point where you're like, I don't want to be cleaning up piss and shit from my house. You know what I mean?
right.
And it's gross. And it's like that's the kind of stuff that happens when somebody's really sick, vomit and this and that and everything
And there's
else.
no guidebook on it. There's nothing to say, here's
No.
how to do it. And I think, you know, from a caregiver standpoint, you kind of hit the nail on the head earlier where you said you wish people had just told you about this.
Yeah.
And as a caregiver, everything is about the patient, which I get it. Gina had cancer, so all the resources went to her, all the attention went to her, as it should be. But there was nothing for the caregiver where they said, hey, here's the mental anguish you're going to go through. You know,
That's like a
here's
book. That's like a book or or something for you that you could probably write very
yeah,
well. Like the caretaker's caretaker. Like
yeah.
you need to take care of yourself,
Well, I
you know.
might actually interview your dad on that. I'll get some quotes from him.
That would be awesome.
You
Yeah,
know,
he'd
it's
probably love that.
interesting. We started as a veteran. I started a foundation, but it's specifically for the military spouse. And we just award
Mhm.
scholarships to that person because we found there was a kind of an unsung hero over here that people forgot about because everybody pays attention to the veteran as it should be. But then we found, well, here's a missing component that's so important. And so we started a foundation in 2019. We handed out over 25,000 in scholarships. I mean,
Amazing.
it was awesome. It was the mill spouse community. It's just these unsung heroes, and they're all ambitious. They're very entrepreneurial. They're very dedicated and loyal.
There's a lot of opportunity there. They have a lot of time to do
That's
and
right.
dedicate to things that could be great, but like maybe nobody's giving them that little push that they need.
Yeah.
Maybe somebody's not giving them that inspiration. Maybe they don't believe that they could be part of something bigger. But I've seen a lot of women step up, and men, with, you know, significant others in the military step
Yeah.
up. Like there's actually a group right now that I'm trying to get in touch with. This guy Marcus Capone and his wife, and they're vets. They actually have a company called Vets, which I don't know what it stands for, but basically they're into the psychedelic world, and they're using their, the guy did an Ibogaine treatment and completely got rid of his CTE issues. And he's like, wait a second, this could be amazing. Like this could have huge implications, not just for veterans, but what about the NFL? What about the
Oh, that's
UFC?
right.
And so you
Well,
have these guys, and so, but the important angle there is that the guy, got out of the military and did this treatment, and it was such a miracle that it was the wife's idea to start this thing. So the wife's like, hey, we gotta help people out here, you know. And
and you know,
so
it's
those
not
military
uncommon. Well,
spouses are
it's not
huge.
uncommon that the veteran's wife tends to make things happen. You know?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I see it all the time
Yeah.
where where once the wife steps in, then it's like, okay, well, now we got it going.
Oh, now we're off to the races. Well, let me ask you this, Chris. What's up ahead after Meatheads? Does that become the psychedelic documentary?
There's no order to anything now because like nothing is funded yet. So there's a lot of like details that go on with a lot of these things. So I I would love to just go ahead and make another movie, but it's all funding and money and
Yeah,
stuff. And so I've been, it's like to make these documentaries, you got to come across the right person at the right time.
yeah,
You can do things like crowdfunding, but I haven't really been a fan of that. I usually like to just try to raise money from a few people. So yeah, I'm not really sure what's next, but hopefully I can get a move on things within the next couple months here because it's, like I've been taking some sort of not necessarily downtime, but I've been enjoying downtime through like
yeah,
COVID, and I've used it to like in the past like year or two, I've really just been exploring all sorts of things with it's kind of been really nice to not be on a project, but it's
yeah.
also at the point where now I'm at the point where like I better do something or I'm going to die. So I do some other things to make money, um, but they're not in the film space. And so I definitely want to dive back into getting films out there because I think that's sort of my calling and that's what's really important. So, and like the other thing is too, if money becomes an issue and that doesn't happen, I might just start doing more. Like, so I did this short film and I put it out on YouTube, and it did pretty good. I mean, it got like I'm not smart with the way I put a lot of these things out because I kind of don't want to overexpose it. Like when I first
Yeah,
put out the Ibogaine movie, I didn't want too many people to see it. Just kind of want it to be like, okay, like I just want to let a couple people know about it
sure.
and see how it goes, and then make sure nobody dies, or something
Yeah.
crazy happens from it. And so yeah, I put it out with like not a lot of attention to it, not a lot, but I do think that in the future, if I do more of these like shorter documentaries, first of all, I can do them like the Ibogaine movie. I did 100% by myself. It's the first time I've ever done anything like that.
Hmm.
So I've never really taken a chance to just say, what if I cut the movie myself? After doing that, I actually believe I can cut a whole movie by myself. I just need a little bit of a team to help me shoot it and help
Yeah,
me put stuff together. I've been finding the hardest thing to find because I'm in Sacramento now. And even when I was in LA, just finding people that are good producers that aren't flaky, that can really help. That
yeah,
I need to find more people that have as much a vested interest in making something great as I do. And that's what I've been finding troubling is that like everybody just wants a paycheck. Like I could pay anybody to do a great job. I mean, that's easy. I'm
that's
looking
right.
for somebody who's willing to show up before I have the checkbook out and
That's
say,
right.
I'll get involved now. But it's like it's funny that you don't find those people. And then when the checkbook comes out, I have 30 of those people circling around me, but then they don't do any work once I pay them. So it's like I'm trying to find
You know,
the right partners and people to get involved with to
well,
move
it's
forward.
funny. I always say your passion has to be deeper than a paycheck, and that's tough to find,
Yeah,
you know?
it really is. It's like I've been struggling with that actually meeting kind of the right people in the film business since I left film school. So it's not easy. It's not easy to find,
But I
the
think,
right people.
Chris, I think that, well, especially after our discussion here, I think people are going to reach out to you. Where's the best place for people to find out more about Chris Bell, find out more about the films that you're putting out there, the films that are coming up? What is the best place for people to take a look
The
for you?
best and easiest place for people to find me and contact me is just on Instagram. So just at Big Strong Fast. So bigger, stronger, faster. Just shorten that down to Big Strong Fast. I'm
Big,
on
strong, fast.
there. I tweet not a whole lot, but I'm on Twitter. Find Twitter can be a mess. It's hard to even with Instagram, it's hard to deliver really good, solid messages in a minute or less, or in
Yeah,
in like a paragraph. So I try to stay away from getting too tied up on what I say on social media. I try to just sort of drop hints at things and use these podcasts as vehicles
yeah.
to do more.
So let me ask you this. I think that what you do best, in my opinion, is you have this unique mindset. You've had it since I've known you, since 93, 94. I always just felt like when I think about Chris Bell, I think about unstoppable. And not just because, you were benching 500 and squatting 650 at the time. And you were literally unstoppable physically. I think unstoppable mentally. And, you know, maybe there's somebody listening right now that whether they want to pursue a career in film or whatnot, but just in life in general, you know, if you had some words of advice for somebody just kind of getting started out to stay in touch with a strong mindset to help them overcome stuff, you know, do you have any pointers on how to keep your mindset sharp?
Yeah, I think the most important thing to keep your mindset sharp is to keep your mind open. So many people have ideas and they close it down into like what they want it to be. And I've seen so many people, both like I have you and I both have some of the most talented friends that we went to film school with that are doing nothing with their careers right now. And why are they doing nothing with their careers? Or even, you know, you don't have to be making movies to be doing something, right?
Right.
But the reason why they're not doing anything is because they didn't adapt to like what's going on in life. I said there's a lot of bumpers out there.
Yep.
So your whole life is like a game of like pinball almost, and like it'll bounce you here, it bounce you over here to my wife has cancer, bounce you over here, my dad has diabetes, to down, you know, and all these things, and you got to be able to like bounce off one and kind of find a different direction to go sometimes. And so like for you, for example, you're an amazing filmmaker, but you're inspiring people in other ways now because you were able to bounce and adapt to something else and do something else, right? Because you know as well as I do, trying to be a caretaker and make a movie, that's almost impossible. You wouldn't be able to do it. You need to have a living where you can actually perform it, right?
Yeah.
And so not everything's going to work out for you the way that you intended. And if it doesn't work out for you the way you intended, just take that path as far as you can go. You know, and I think that that's the important thing is I never wanted to make documentary films. I always told people I was the biggest Arnold fan growing up, and I wanted to go to USC film school instead of NYU because NYU was like Woody Allen and Spike Lee, and I wanted to blow things up. And you can't blow things up in New York, you know? So
that's right.
When I decided like what film school I wanted to go to, I'm like, I want to go to USC because that's the kind of place where they're going to blow things up.
That's right.
And guess what? Guess how many things I've blown up in my career? None. I haven't blown up anything, you know?
Well, you know what? There's always the years coming ahead. We'll get to blow some stuff up though. But I think
if you look at my little brother, he wanted to be a power lifter. All he wanted to do was break records in powerlifting. And it led him to a multi-million-dollar career as an influencer. You know, if you look up Mark Smelly Bell he still goes by Smelly, by the way. If you look up Mark Smelly Bell on Instagram, YouTube, wherever, I mean, he's everywhere, and he's inspiring people because he had an open mind to take this to a different level.
You know, I think, Chris, I would sum it up that you have been blowing some stuff up. You've been blowing minds, blowing them up and getting us to think differently. So maybe we don't have the big explosions like from T2, but if you can get people to think differently, I mean, that's a huge bridge to cross. I think it's the toughest part of the journey. Hey, I appreciate you taking some time to be on the show today. It's so good to see you, hear your voice.
Absolutely. And we should stay in touch, man. I got a lot more to talk to you about.
I've got a lot more questions for you. I'm interested in staying on this journey with you. And I'm committed to introducing people to you, your films, and just the knowledge that you have. I mean, so I thank you. Appreciate it. And when I get out to California,
you're in good shape. Have you tried any of this crazy diet stuff lately? You look like you're in great shape still.
Well, you know, you've
been eating good, taking care of yourself.
Yeah. I've had my ebbs and flows. You know, I actually put on a lot of weight as Gina's caregiver, and so I ended up writing a fitness book, a weight loss.
That's awesome.
Book. So I lost.
That's great.
I lost 42 pounds in 90 days.
Well, how did you do it?
You know, is exactly what you're saying. I had to first get my mindset right, because if I wasn't committed to that goal, it was easy to have that Hostess ding dong or the mac and cheese or that pizza pie. Once my mindset was there, I just had a balanced diet, and it was basic weight training. You know,
isn't that funny?
It really was.
You lowered your calories and you did some exercise, right?
You know, Chris, that was it. And I wrote a book. You know, I've always made I'm on my I just finished my 7th book, and I made a commitment that if somebody asked me 10 times how I did something, I'm writing a book about it. So when you know how it is, when you drop that much weight, people are like, how'd you do it? How'd you do it? Yeah. And sometimes I feel like, so the book is called The Scale Factor, because I feel like the scale is such a huge mental factor when we step on it. People get all bent out of shape about it. They don't want to go near the scale. I wanted the scale to be a positive factor, but I put on so much weight.
Encourage people to weigh themselves?
I do.
Or,
I do. From the
that's
standpoint.
actually good. I agree with that. So my brother and I tell people, weigh yourself every day at the same time on the same scale. And if it's not every day, weigh yourself consistently. Like if you're going to weigh yourself once a week, weigh yourself once a week on the same day, on the same scale. The problem is people stop at every scale they see and they hop on it and they're like 210, what the hell? I was 205 yesterday. Well, yeah, it's also 4 p.m. and you got work boots on.
So here,
you know
okay,
so it's like
we're on the same page because I actually encourage weighing in the morning. You know, once you wake up, weigh in, but it's consistent. And so I was doing that, and I, you know, over 90 days, I averaged about a half a pound a day. Some days it was 1 pound, some days it was no pounds. Some days I gained, some days I lost. But after 90 days, it was really 88 days. So I'd set a 90-day goal and hit it in 88 days. It was crazy.
Did you track your food at all? Because I think tracking your food teaches you a lot about yourself and a lot about like what's in food, right? So you just look at foods and you go like, what? Like that's why I was even saying that rule before, where you multiply the protein times 10. Like, you know, that's Ted Naiman. If anybody want to look up Ted Naiman, he has Naiman. He's got a lot of great, just simple fitness tips.
Oh, I
think he's out. He might be out where you are. I think.
Oh, in the Midwest
he's
here?
Out by you, that guy. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I'll have to get him on the show. I started tracking it daily, what I was eating, and I was spacing it out a little bit more. So it wasn't just 3 big meals, but I was having little boosters in between that kept my metabolism going. And, you know, it's like you said, it was calories in, calories out. It was being consistent. But it was a huge, the mental boost when you lose weight, though, was awesome.
Do you know what's ironic? This is so weird. One last thing. I know we got to go. When I was in college with you, I did a diet that was red meat and water. Do you remember that?
I do.
I don't know if you remember.
Yeah.
But I did. Yes. So that was a carnivore diet, right? Way back in 1993. Now it's the most popular diet like on the internet right now. If you go on the internet and look up diets, sort of the number one thing people are talking about is a carnivore diet.
Yeah.
And it's like highly controversial because there's a guy, Dr. Sean Baker, he was on Joe Rogan's podcast talking about it. But when I was on Joe Rogan's podcast, like 3 years before that, I mentioned it. I'm like, I used to do this crazy diet. It was red meat and water. And Rogan's response to it was like, what were your shits like? That was his immediate response. And then after that, he actually ended up going on it and, you know, doing really well on it too. And I don't think it's a great diet for a long term, but I do think it's a great, again, intervention. You have some sort of health problem. You do it as an intervention, you get over that problem, and then you sort of like add foods back in slowly.
I remember you being on that diet because I went with you a few times to the USC gym and we worked out. And you were talking about it then. Yeah.
It was great. Me and Drew. Me and my buddy Drew.
Yeah, you were way ahead of the curve back then.
Not even trying to be, just being a meathead, you know.
Hey, I like how you put a positive spin on being a meathead, so we can all be meathead.
Yeah, it's good. It's a good thing.
I'm in. Hey, anybody that's telling me I can get healthy eating a steak, you've got my attention.
Yeah, so there you go.
All in. Hey, I can't wait to see the film.
I love you, buddy. It's so good to see you, man.
I love you too, brother. Can't wait to see the film. Can't wait to have you back on here. Appreciate your time, brother.
Buddy.
Have a good one.
Yep. Take care, buddy.